Shaman Uwase with the Murder of Crows. Today I'm going to show you how to build a 21-inch punch shield. It's a Plastidip shield made out of foam and other materials that you can get locally in most places in the continental U.S. I'm also going to be doing it with no power tools, so anybody can do this. We'll be using a very sharp knife, so please be careful with that. For the murder, this is the murder shield that you'll be expected to make whenever you take on the path of Archmage and call to the element of stone, or the element of earth. You'll be expected to make this exact shield, and I'll go into more detail on our Facebook page about the designs and how we put that in. But I do show on here how to lay out your feathers, so pay attention. Yeah, anybody can make these shields, so stay tuned and I will show you how we do it with local materials with very little in the way of tools and improvising some things. Today we're going to be building a simple Plastidip shield. This is our basic Murder of Crows shield that we use as a starter in the unit. Later on you earn the Anfeng Sao, which is much nicer. But this one is good for learning shield work. It's a 21-inch round punch shield, and it's made from all local materials, locally available materials. So what we're going to need is 2 rolls of this blue foam, two rolls of Ozark Trail blue foam, 1 piece of this anti-fatigue mat, or 4 pounds you get from Harbor Freight. This you get from Walmart. Things like $8 for 5 pieces of this, $9. A couple cans of spray Plastidip, and I choose to use this because it's faster, easier. The other stuff does go on thicker and has some benefits, but the spray stuff works just fine for me. I'm going to need my trusty fillet knife for cutting. I'm going to need these 2 things, Sharpie and a pencil. And those are actually just to make kind of a compass to describe a circle, and a piece of paracord, and my measuring stick here. Also your DAP cement. This stuff is a small can you get at Walmart. It's about $6 for a can like this, and it'll take about 1.5 to make this shield. I usually get a bigger can, but I'm just using this because this is just what I have to do today. Save some money. Alright, so we're going to toss the... Okay, first measurement you want to make is with this blue foam. Measure it. It is 20 inches exactly. So what we're going to want to do is, so that we can get a circle, a single circle out of this without having to split it and glue it all together and all that stuff, single circle out of this, we're going to make our shield face 20 inches round. It's going to be a 21-inch once we get another wrap on this. You're actually going to need about 3 pieces of this, 4 pieces. This one for the face, and then 3 more for the, nope, I'm wrong. 2 more pieces, 3 pieces of this. So this piece for the face, and then 2 more pieces for the outer rim of the shield whenever we get to that point. Right now, what we're going to do is move all these things out of the way. Check my camera to make sure it's still focused in where I need it. Yeah, looking good. Alright, so we're going to find the center of this piece here. How we're going to do that is we're going to measure from one side. We've got 22¼ inches. So that means we're going to look for 11 1/8. It's going to be right here. Made a line across there. And we're going to measure in this way and make sure it's the same both sides. 22¼ inches it is. So we're going to measure in 11 1/8. That's going to be here. So that makes our center where those 2 cross. Now we're going to make a compass. And there's plenty of ways to do this, better ways I'm sure. By doing this and measuring this to be put a 10-inch loop in here, so it'll make us a 20-inch arc around, or a 10-inch radius, 20-inch diameter. Let's just do it like this. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to find 10 inches on this thing. Alright, that's my 10-inch mark right there. Alright, so I got my 10-inch mark. I'm going to put my pencil through my paracord. Okay, and I'm going to pin it down right there, very center. Once I've got that pinned down, I'm going to use this to scribe an arc. Make sure you keep your Sharpie straight up and down. Okay, still holding it in the same place. Of course, there are many better ways to do this. I just try to work with what I have handy. And it does scribe a good circle. Okay. Now we got that, we'll give her a check just to make sure that we are at 20 inches in diameter. Placing this here. Find the widest point. Yeah, it comes pretty close to 20. I'll cut to the outside of this because it's actually about 19 and 7/8. We're going to cut to the outside of the line. Actually, 19 and 7/8 space would probably be good. That way, in case there's any discrepancies in the blue foam, it'll be fine. All right, now it's a matter of sharpening this guy up. When I'm cutting a circle like this with my fillet knife, I always keep the fillet knife pointed away from me. I'll insert it here and just kind of use it as a jigsaw, keeping the fillet knife straight up and down. Keep it as clean as possible. There will be some grinding work done when we're done with this, but the cleaner we keep it, the less there will be. Okay, so I'm going to save you the time on that. I'm just going to get this done. But as you can see, it makes a pretty good cut. So I'm going to save you the time on this. Alright, so we've got our 20-inch round cut out of the 4-pound. Now we're going to go to our blue foam. I like to mark the top and the bottom because sometimes these things don't end up exactly circular with that sort of a compass that I made. It's not perfect. I like top bit here, an X, bottom bit here. Oh. Okay, hold this down as flat as you can. Get it pretty close to the edge there for conservation of materials. Circumscribe all the way around. Bigger is better. If you cut it a little larger on the blue foam, it's better because you're gonna grind down to this. You're gonna grind down to this whenever you start to grind. So a little extra blue foam is absolutely fine. All right, so we make that circle and we cut it out. And what we're going to end up doing here is eventually making 3 circles out of each piece of foam, each roll of foam. Leave a little bit between them, you know, like a 1/2 inch or whatever, so you got some space to cut. Got to line those up with the flat edges here. Mark there. Mark there. That's hard to see right there with that foam rolling up, but pretty self-explanatory. Just make a mark all the way around. always hold pressure on your top piece so that it stays in one position, and check around to make sure that you had it in one position when you made your circle. Okay, so there's that. One more circle out of this. And what you want to do is you want to eventually have 6 of these circles cut. That we're actually going to flip this thing over, keep that, stop that roll. Okay. Next time, roll it over like this so that you don't have the thing rolling up on you if you're trying to do a video, right? Alright, so my other circle's ending about right there, so put this guy right here. Circumscribe, makes a little mark there for top, there for bottom. Circumscribe. That's our third one. So we're going to mark out all 6 of them like this. And then after all 6 of them are marked out, I'm going to cut them out. Basically the same way I did with the other, with my fillet knife. Now with this, using scissors is really an option, man, because scissors cut this really easy if you got a decent pair, like kitchen shears or something like that. You can actually cut this with scissors too. It'll wear your hand out. So I may actually do this with scissors, or I may just cut it out with my knife. We'll see. But either way, I'm going to cut all these out, and then I'll come back to you, and we'll start gluing them together. Okay, so we're back. Cut out some of these rounds here, and they're just going to glue right down onto this. Now, I've used the texture side as the back because I really want to be able to put my own texture on there, and I don't want that. So this is going to glue on here, and it's going to go 6 of these deep. The reason I say 6 is because that's about as much space as you need for most hands to be able to grab the handle, which is going to be inset, and still have enough room to fight. Now, if you got bigger mitts, you know, you might want to go 7 deep, or yeah, I'd go 7 deep. Anything other than that, it was kind of derpy because it gets thick. I have made some that are 5 deep, and it's still very stable, and it won't taco or anything. But you just have to leave the handle out a little bit instead of setting it in so far, even for smaller hands like my girlfriend. Savvy. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is get our weldwood contact cement here. DAP. This is a fresh can. I love it when it's fresh because it goes on really easy. Go ahead and put some on here. This is for the beginner. This is easy stuff. Plastidip shields, of course, get way more intricate and much nicer. I've built some nicer ones, and I've got one that I want to try to build before Winter War, but you know, that's a week away. I've got 3 of these little guys to build, and probably about 20 arrows to put together. Yeah. The way it always is before Winter War for a crafter is the last week you've got 1,000 things to do. At least one like myself that procrastinates. Sure am looking forward to it this year. It's going to be great. Crows have a new camp we're going to start building on. It's going to be super fun. New tactics. Now on this, when you're putting it on here, you can get it pretty thick because 4-pound does soak up a good bit of this stuff. I usually just put a glob on there like that and just kind of move it around until it's thinned out. Make sure you get it all the way to the edges. This old table's seen a lot of work done on it. That's why it's so scarred up and everything. And if you'll notice, this, as I put this contact cement on, this DAP on, my shield starts to bubble up a little bit in the middle. Now, when it does that, let you know that it's starting to dry, but it's drying at a different rate and kind of contracting the edges. Now it'll bubble up a little bit and it'll start to flatten out by the time that it's ready to glue. Okay, so this is covered good in DAP. We're gonna move this to the side. We're gonna take this guy. I like to, instead of doing the concave side, I like to do the convex side on the first one, just because it's easier to lay down that way. Now we will flip-flop that back and forth to keep your shield from getting a definite bend in it, you know. But on this one I always do the concave or convex side. Much easier to put DAP on blue foam than it is on 4-pound. It just glides on so easy. Especially new DAP. If you had your DAP around for a little while and it's had some oxygen to it and it starts to oxidize a little, it gets a little thick. It's harder to spread. This is brand new DAP. Down here in the South, Winter War is pretty much our premier event. It's in South Carolina. No, if any of you have never been to it, I recommend you go. It's really nice. There's it's at East Wind Castle. King Kelliance and Kushi have put together an awesome event, and we really have a good time at it every year. Nice, like a little medieval village in the middle of town, and good battles, great field for battles. Assassin's tourney, tournaments, lots of entertainment, plenty of free booze and good people. And that's the main event that we go to every year, Murder of Crows, because it's the closest one to us, and a lot of us have a lot of RL. I'm really looking forward to it this year. Kushi does a great job with the organizing of the event. I think Thamori is running some battles this year. They do an awesome job. Good guys and gals. Last little bit on here. A little bit right over there. Alright, I think we're solid on this piece. I'm going to let it dry for 15 minutes, let them cure for 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and stick those together and put on the next layer. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes. Everything's dry to the touch. You can see it doesn't stick to my fingers or anything. It's pretty dry. This thing's still a little bubbled, but it's getting there. So what we're going to do now is glue this piece. So I'm going to take and put, let's see if I can get it this way. Here we go. All right, I'm going to just touch it in one spot right here. And then I'll take my eyeballs and my fingers and make sure that it's going down exactly on the edges all the way around. It is, and from that point we can just, once we've got it where it's coming on the edges just fine around here, just like that. For a good press down all over. Now we're going to put some weight on this after we get them all glued together. You'll see it hangs over a little on this edge over here, and that's fine. That's a good thing. We'll grind that off at the end. Excess is better. It can be removed. It can't be added. Well, it can be added, but it's just a pain in the ass. All right. So now we got that done. Grab another piece over here. Okay. And so instead of gluing this down, see how it's starting to do that? A little concavity there. Instead of gluing this down like this, which would further facilitate that, we're going to glue this one down in this direction so that it'll counter that. So what we want to do is put DAP on this and then DAP on the concave side of this second one. So we'll go ahead and do that. Get our cement out. Blow the random insects off of it. Really, after this point, I'll set down the wind's blowing a little. Really, after this point, it's just doing successive layers with concave side down, convex side down, back and forth. We'll glue this one, and then after that, I'll glue the others, and we'll come back from there and do some other work on it. You don't want to leave big puddles of DAP, big globs. You also don't want to leave it too thin. You want to make sure it's got some stuff to bond to, because the DAP actually bonds to itself and the substrate that you're putting it on. It's very stringy. Talking about winter war at East Wind, I think last year or the year before, they had in the middle of town, like I said, it's a little medieval town where all the shops are, you know, good people out there. There's usually badass garb and good basic garb, and Gorg the blacksmith. A lot of good vendors out there in town, but also there's good entertainment. Last year they had people out there spinning fire, twirling fire. There was one night they had like a Celtic rock band. I didn't recognize all of the songs, but they played a lot of stuff like Flogging Molly and some Dropkick Murphys and stuff like that. It was good. It was nice. And the Assassin's Tourney is always fun. I actually won it last year. That was cool. But I played hard. Played pretty hard. The whole event. And this year I'm not going to do that. I'm going to focus more on camp life and improving our camp life, since we got a new spot. It's going to serve us very well. Okay, like I said, I'm going to do the concave side on this one. Glue down to that. Winter war events usually about, or at least the past couple of years, it's increased, and it's still getting bigger and bigger. I think we had 750 last year people, and that's a lot of dag folk, man. That's a lot of good people out there, a lot of good fights, a lot of good knowledge too. Everybody's usually willing to teach you things that you don't know, whether it's about combat or crafts or anything. Not to mention nightlife's awesome, visiting other camps, and always a party in Couchy. Enjoyed Couchy camp last year. Sword brother Valeno and was there. He's a good friend. And they did Poisoner's Bar last year, which they're going to do this year also. They have some delicious drinks that will set your mind right. There was they had butterbeer last year. That was probably my favorite of all of them. It was a delicious drink. Might have had a few too many of them. It's all dapped on. It's really more difficult to do these concave sides because you got to kind of hold it flat while you're doing it. So always make sure you get it all the way to the edge. I I've made probably 10 shields like this. Well, that might be a little bit of an overstatement. Maybe 8. But I haven't had any failures with any of them at all, other than maybe over time and use, a little bit of foam getting chipped off the edges from battle or being treated roughly, which I treat mine pretty roughly. And maybe paint gets chippy after a year and a half. Touch it up, but not a big deal. After we get them Plastidip and everything, I usually use just a cheap acrylic paint for these, and it works pretty good. All right, so like I said, concave side, going down to the concave face on this last one to help combat that or battle that bend that's going to happen, natural bend. So we're going to let these dry for about 15 minutes, come back and stick that, and I'll show you how we stick the second one on, because there's not much to it, but you just want to make sure you line it up with the other edge and leave a little extra. We'll come back to that in a minute, stick those two together, and continue on. Okay, so these are dry, and now we're just gonna add this one. Now this was the edge that I put on square before, as you can see there, and then the opposite edge is the one that was hanging over, you can see there. All right, so we're gonna take the square edge and start from there to put the next one on. So again, actually I'm gonna take this and roll it this way a little bit, take some of that concavity out while I'm working with it. Don't roll it back on itself too much, or else you'll get it stuck together. All right, so then we take it, and we're gonna leave just a little hanging over here, just for the sake of having a little excess. All right, like so. Push that down, make sure it's going in the right direction all the way around, and it is. And again, it's just a matter of pushing it all down. So that's your second layer of foam. As you can see, it's flattened out now. It's not as concave as it was. And that's your second layer of blue foam. Now, like I said, we're going to put 6 layers of this blue foam on. And I guess you know the score from here on. And we've done 2 layers. Just the same thing back and forth. Next one's going to be convex side down, then concave side down, then convex side down. We'll keep flipping them like that to keep it balanced. And then after we get them all glued on, I'll come back and I'll show you how we clean up the edges, make the band around, and then we'll start working on the artwork face. All right. Okay, so now we have our face piece, our 6 layers glued to it of blue foam. And as you can see, they're not all even with each other, but they're all at least even with this or past it. Excess is okay, because we're going to grind all this off and make it pretty. Actually, it's better to have excess so that you have something to work with. So we've got all that, and now the only thing left to do is to put something flat on top of it to hold it down and put some pressure on it and some weight. The flat piece can be anything, piece of, I wouldn't go with cardboard. It needs to be something pretty rigid, like plywood or something like that, at least the size of this or larger. And for me, that's going to be this old vintage stop sign, because it's in the yard. I'm not a professional here. And then you want to put some weight on top of it, something heavy. So a couple of heavy weights. For me, it's going to be these 2 30-pound dumbbells and a copy of the Basic Writings of Nietzsche. So initially the plan was to use my belt sander to do this, to grind this off, but I got thinking about it. Not everybody has a belt sander, right? So we're going to try to use the fillet knife, just cut straight down and see how close and straight we can get it. It's going to take a little effort, but I think we can get it close enough that we can get the piece around it to hold it tight. Just make sure our knife's really sharp here. Not everybody has a belt sander, so we're going to go this route. What we're going to do is we're going to push this straight down, keeping it flush with the edge here. I'm just going to use it like it's a jigsaw. Just go right around the edge. Try to keep it, stay over top of it so you can see that you're going straight up and down. That dog around the corner always sounds like he's dying. That's straight down like this. All the way around. We may have to come back and trim some up a little bit here and there, we'll see. It's pretty close right there. That's our flush side here, so it's pretty tight. Sharpen our fillet knife up a little bit. It actually works really well. Nice, I don't know if you can see that, a nice flush edge there. Some spots here a little bump, but we can shave that off whenever we get done here, roughing it out. Cut straight around like so. It's doing a nice job. That off, a little over halfway around. Okay, we'll start back here, get another couple of strokes here. Keep it nice and sharp. Just cuts through it like butter. Also, at this angle, you try to keep it straight up and down like this. Make sure if you lean it anyway, you lean it this way and not that way. Because if you're leaning it this way, then you're taking too much out. Always better to leave a little and cut a second time. Alright, there we are. Now we have our shield blank pretty much. I'll go back around, like save that right there. Shave that right off a little. What else we got here? A little bit of a bump in that area. Shave it right now. Looking pretty good though. You want to get this edge as smooth as possible going around, because this is where you're going to be taking all your hits pretty much, is to the top of your shield, not the face so much as covering your shoulder and things like that. Right, so now we have that. So that's our shield blank pretty much. Now we'll do face work to it and also do the back side. So we'll do some lines here first for the face work. First thing I usually do is, for our shields, we have a kind of a faux band that goes around it. So I usually give about a 1/2 inch. And I just eyeball it. You know, things aren't supposed to be perfect. You want it to look real, so just get it as close as you can here. Now the process or the steps are to draw on what you want, and then I use a wood burner to make the texture. And we'll get into that here in a little while. First things first, this little 1/2-inch band around. This is our crow shield that I'm making. This one's actually for Sage Golden Bow. He's one of the 3 High Council. Really good guy and a hell of an archer and hell of a fighter, martial artist. This is his basic crow shield that I'm making. So crows especially pay attention to this part, because if you take the path of the Archmage, when you follow the path of Earth, I think, when you're following the Earth path, you have to make a shield for another crow. And so, this is how you do it. That's going to represent our little band around. Also, it's going to get that. Also, it's going to get that cap around here of the one more layer of 4-pound round. So that's the band, and then we want to take this. We want to make some planks. Turn that. I've been using that for my top side, so we'll just keep going with that. For your planks, I usually start in the middle. Like I said, I've got the top marked, got the bottom marked, so I'll start roughly in the middle. These are planks; they don't have to be exactly right, but you do want them. Want your lines parallel. So I'll make a line here. Doesn't have to be exactly centered, I guess is what I was trying to say. But you want to make sure that the, let's see, let's move the camera just a little here. So we're making, now that we've got it all cut out, we've drawn a 1/2-inch line around here with our Sharpie. And I've drawn one line down the center here, and it's just a little off to the side. What we're drawing now are the planks. You want your planks to be parallel. You want this line to be exactly parallel with that one, not askew like that or askew like that, but as parallel as possible. Because you want it to look good, right? Plank there. Make this one a little bit of a wider plank. One over here. Again. So now we have our planks. Now, a lot of people do wood grain a lot of different ways. I kind of freehand it, and I typically start just like this. I'll do something like that. I'll do something to follow it. Something to follow it. Maybe have one come in like this, go down, back around like that. At which point, have this follow around that way, this around that way. There's a lot of people better at making wood grain texture than I am. I think this looks pretty good whenever you get it done. Typically if I go that way, I try to go the other way for the next one. This one goes straight across. You kind of follow the contour of the last line that you did with each line, at least somewhat. At this point, you're just drawing it on, so you can always decide not to do whatever you've done on there. If you make a line that you don't like, don't wood burn it on there. It'll be painted over. So we're going to continue and do that, and then I'll get back to you in a few minutes whenever we start the wood burning. Okay, so I decided to come back right where we stopped earlier and do this bit here specifically for the murder of crows. So I've got a makeshift compass. It is a compass, but I needed one that was a little more sturdy, so I used a chopstick as a chopstick for everything, and I put a Sharpie on there for the thing. Now what we're going to do is we want a radius of, let's say a radius of 5, let's go, radius of 6. Radius of 6 inches is what we're going to start with here. May have to adjust that, but we'll see. So you'll start with your center point and make yourself, this is for making the murder shield now. This is not for anybody else making a shield. This is just for our design on it. I want to explain it so people will know how to do it. So make yourself a radius 6 inches. Hopefully this is sturdy enough to hold it in place. Let's see. Yep, still in good. Okay, so we got ourselves a 6-inch radius. Now we're going to go roughly find the center of the bottom. You want it to be as close to center as possible. And if you'll remember, we've got our little center mark that we marked here earlier when we first started this project. So we'll start here, call that center, and we'll go to the center of our circle. What we're going to do is we're going to scribe a line there, we're going to scribe a line here. Okay, and then we're going to measure that. What we're trying to do is make an equilateral triangle, or mostly. So we'll measure this, and this one comes out to 10 1/4. So I'm going to take the point where it crossed right here, go this way until I measure to exactly 10 1/4 up here. Get it right on the line. Okay. Draw from there to there, and 10 1/4. And on this side, I'm going to do the same thing from that one to this one, and it comes out to exactly 10 1/4. So we've got an equilateral triangle now. All right. We just connect these two, of course. If we did this right, it's 10 1/4, and it is. All right. So now, crows, we have made ourselves equilateral triangle of 10 1/4 inches on each side. Now we take our stencil when we're making our shields, and we want to put the flat side this way. Basically, you want this to just touch your rim, but stay on the flat sides lined up with this triangle. So with that just touching the rim there, and this lined up here, and this bit here just touching the rim up here, the top part, we will go ahead and trace all this out. Okay, now that's an important one. And I always go up here and I make another one for reference, so I can always look back and make sure that I'm where I need to be when I'm tracing them on. Alright. And you see that's even with this and just touching the edge up there. It doesn't always turn out exactly perfect like that, but we're going to try to get it close. Bring this down, just touching the edge. That one's going to be there. All right. This is about the placement of your feathers, which really matters, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to figure it out if you don't use a little math. That one. This one. This one. Okay, and then again, over here, bring this back. It's just touching, even with the line. Right back into there. All right, and then you just trace all these out. You make these reference lines here. You just trace all this out on here. But crows, that is how you position your feathers on your basic crow shield. Of course, as you know, or you should know by now, the really tedious part is actually tracing these pieces out into craft foam and cutting them out. It's a labor of love. It's about dedication. You got to do the things. All right, so those are your reference points, and then of course you just use your stencil to put them on there. And we'll get back to the rest in just a little while. Just wanted to show that little clip in there before I carry on with the wood grain and everything else. Okay, so at this point you can see I've done a little work. What I usually do is put whatever graphics I'm going to put on here first before I start wood burning, because especially with this with the craft foam, if you have grooves under it, then you can see the dips in it, and it really messes up your graphics. I got a little bit of 4-pound here. This is for Sage Golden Bow, the Druid. With our murder shields, we all have the same three feathers, but in the center we have our personal symbol. So at this point, you've got your wood grain drawn on here. You've got your lines drawn for your planks. We've got our small band around the perimeter, and we're going to wood burn this all in there. So you start with your heavy lines. I usually do this outside one first. Just a wood burner. No special tip. This is the one you can buy from Walmart or wherever for 12 bucks. Had this one for quite a long time. Get it good and hot, and I dig deep on these big lines, just to give it contrast with the smaller lines for the wood grain. Goes pretty fast. Dig it in there. Again, at this point, things don't have to be perfect because it's a shield. It's supposed to look a little rough and worn. Some shields, you know, people put scars across the front of them and things like that to make it look battle worn. I don't do that on our murder shields, but I'm about to do that on another shield for a gentleman. Follow your lines. You've already done the work. It's just a matter of tracing over it now. You'll notice after you've done a bit, your wood burner starts to cool down. You kind of got to give it a second, let it heat up again. I'm going to again go ahead and do the heavy lines first, which are going to be these plank lines.
tip in there. Put a little dot right in between those. Nothing wrong with regular foam shields with cloth covers on them, but these Plastidip shields really do look good. Adds a little bit to realism. And I like that. I like for everybody to look good. I like for when I go to an event, I like for things to look period. Don't ruin my evil experience, bro. And the way I do them with the blue foam and stuff, that's a little labor intensive compared to some people just order the planks of that type of foam online. That's awesome. However, the purpose of this is to show that anybody can buy the things in their own town to make some of this stuff. It is accessible to everybody. You don't have to order it online. I don't like to wait on things either. Working around my graphic stuff here. Slow and easy. Some of this DAP here is pretty fresh. It doesn't ignite and set the shit on fire. Of course it wouldn't, just saying that. I'm trying to dig pretty deep on these hard lines here, plank lines. Okay, so all the plank lines are done. Now we're going to go onto the wood grain lines. With them, just kind of go fast. You want to leave it a little deep because once you get the Plastidip on, it will fill it in a little bit, but just don't want to make it quite as deep as the hard lines. The edge line and the plank lines should be a little deeper. Make a little knot hole right here. Those will kind of burn them out in the middle a little bit. Just make it kind of look rough. You can absolutely paint this on here instead of doing this, but I really like the texture. I like to have a little texture. Be careful not to do the lines that you don't intend to do. I almost drew my circle right there with that one. That one doesn't belong. It'll be alright. It'll fit. I've also been working on one that I'm going to use the wood grain to actually to make a face, like it was the face of a dryad into the wood grain, which will be fun. Looking forward to that. Tried to make this symbol look not exactly like ebon lights because they use the same druidic rays of Allen. I don't know how well I succeeded because it still looks kind of like it. almost done with this part. Okay. Alright, so that's that. And the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to make the wrap that goes around this with 4 pound. It'll cover this side right here and also make our thing a little wider. It's about a 1/2 inch all the way around. So I'll do that and then we will start cutting out for our handle. Right there you've got basic shield blank with your graphics on it. Murder of Crows, be aware that when you do this, this is craft foam here, this is 4 pound. We always like for our personal symbol to stand out a little bit more than this because we value individuality, blah, blah, blah. It's part of the thing. So that's that, and we'll get back to doing the side thing in just a few minutes. So now it's time for us to cut the band that goes around the outside of the shield here. And what we're going to want to do, of course, is to measure it first. This one comes out to 3 1/4, and they should all come out to about 3 1/4 if you're 6 layers of blue and 1 layer of 4 pound. But you always want to measure all the way around to make sure you don't have any places that it's sticking out. But if you constructed it well up to this point, you shouldn't, and it should be very uniform. All right, so I'm going to toss this down here. We're going to take some scraps that I have, like where I've cut things out, you know, and we're going to make us some strips. First thing we're going to do is clean up an edge and make us a nice straight edge to start with. So keeping the blade in contact as much as possible. Relatively pretty straight right there, straight as it gets. Okay, now at this point, of course you can use your regular measuring stick and just measure over 3 1/4, make 2 marks or 3 marks, however many you want, and then make a straight edge and do it like that. What I'm going to do, since I have this handy dandy speed square, I'm going to throw it on there because it's laying here. We're going to go to, let's see, 3 1/4, 3 1/4, 3 1/4. Should be good enough. Gonna make some strips. Should take about 3 of a full length piece of foam, but this one isn't full length because I've been cutting on it for other things. Let's cut here. This one may take 4. Kind of windy out here today. Things flying around everywhere. There's one piece. And 3 1/4 inches. 1/4 inches. 1/4 inches.
2. Could of course measure around your shield and know exactly how many of these you're going to need, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to need 4 for this shield, so I'm going to go ahead and make 4. Excess is always better. You can cut it off, right? Now sometimes when you're cutting like this, you may find that you cut one that's just a little larger or a little smaller. You want them to be as close to exact as possible, but I'm going to show you what to do if that does happen when you start to dap them together. You want to make sure that the front edge, the edge that goes towards the face, is completely flush, because if there's a little overhang on the back and one's a little smaller, a little larger, then it's not as noticeable, but also you can grind that off or cut that off if you want to. As long as everything is flush with the face, that's the most important part. We'll get to that in just a minute. Let me remeasure this because that doesn't look right. 3 1/4. Ah, that's what happened. Accidentally measured 3 inches right there instead of 3 1/4. Measure twice, cut once. That's what my old boss used to say when I was framing houses. So we've got these things cut, and these are the 3-inch strips of 4-pound foam that, like I said, are going to go right here. Now when we glue them on, we're not going to worry about this part back here so much. We're going to make sure that this glues very tightly to this front face. First we're going to stick all of these together end to end to have them solid so we can wrap it around in one single solid piece. So I'm going to square this end off. Looks like I missed one. Important to have these ends pretty straight too. Alright, we'll take our dap, see if I can find something to open it with. So up to this point, this far on the shield, we've used 1 small can of this dap. You'll have a lot of this left over. The only thing we got left to glue is this and the handle in place. Alright, so what we're going to do is first make us a dap stick. Just to apply the dap with. Bits. Like I said, first thing we're going to do is glue all of these together end to end. Let's make ourselves some space on this table. Toss this guy over. It's good to have a nice long table or a nice long work area to do this kind of stuff. Arrows over here, lots of projects going on. Like I said, it's the week before Winter War right now, and trying to get everything squared away for the unit. We're just gonna dap the ends here. When you're dapping these ends, they're on pretty thick because this stuff does absorb, especially the ends. So I just put it on thick like that, both sides. Pretty thick. Then we're gonna let those dry completely before we put them together. Now you got to remember, on this part right here, all this is going to be bent around the outside of the shield, so it's kind of the stress point at each one of these ends right here. They'll be dapped together. Make sure there's plenty of dap. Make sure it's plenty dry before you stick them. Then also, after you stick them, let them set for a couple of hours. Sometimes I even let them sit overnight. Once these are dapped, I'm just gonna let them cure for about 20 minutes. Make sure they're not at all tacky and are ready to be glued. So that's what we're gonna do right now. Set these here, give them 20 minutes to dry and for that dap to get ready to cure. And then I'll come back and we'll stick them together, and I'll show you that bit. Okay, so one thing I didn't show on camera is that I glued these, I let them sit for 15 minutes, and like I said, a lot of that absorbed in. So I went ahead and put another layer on these, another layer of glue, of dap. And now we're ready to stick them together. Now, you'll see right here, look at them while you're putting them together. This right here doesn't have the best surface right there, but I've already dapped it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this be my overhanging surface that I'm eventually gonna cut off. When you're putting these together, here's another example. Okay, when you're putting these together, remember that you want one face, like say this is going to be the front of the shield right here. This is the front of the shield. So you want these faces to be the best faces. Like you see that right there? It's got a little bit of a rip torn spot. That's going to go on the back, and we're going to eventually clean that up with a Dremel tool, sandpaper, or whatever you got. But make sure that one side, this front side, is your best. And make sure that your corners meet up perfectly on that side. This is going to matter for the prettiness of your shield. Push those together really well. Move this one down a little. Like I said, let these cure a little extra time, more than you would other things. I'll choose my best face. I like this face here. So again, I'm going to line up these two front edges. Put them together. Push them in hard. So. Alright. Move that one on down. Like I said, long surfaces are awesome for this. Find my best edge. Both of these are pretty good. I think I like this edge here. Really good for demonstration. Alright, so put these two edges together. Again, one might be tempted to pick it up and do it in front of your face like this, but I always like to work on a flat surface when you're doing stuff like this. It gives you a nice plane to work with. Okay, so now we've got all these glued together, like so. Two pretty thick layers of dap on them. We're just going to let those cure, and I'm going to let these cure for probably about 2 hours. I've got to drive for a couple of hours anyway, so I'll probably come back and do a little bit more of this in the morning. And the next goal is to glue this all the way around our shield here. Once we do that, the shield itself will be pretty much done, other than putting our handle in there and making this all Plastidip and pretty. It's gonna be huge. It's gonna be cool. All right, so see you in a bit. Moving right along here, so we've got this all glued together and it's cured. Like I said, we've got one edge here that's perfect, one edge back here that's not exactly perfect, but we'll get that straightened out. Move that to the side. It's time to prepare the edge here to receive the band that goes around it. So what I'm going to be looking for is spots like this, like where my knife maybe left a little ridge there. I don't know if you can see that. The way I'm going to straighten that out is just with a little sanding block here. Typically, myself, I would do this with a belt sander, but I'm trying to do this at this point with no power tools because I realize some people don't have access to them. So that it is possible. It's just a little more work, but really not that much. Nice coarse grit sanding block. I think this is probably feels like about 60 grit. The reason you're doing this is because you want to get as much contact as possible and also less ripples in your band as you go around. Makes it look nicer, makes it more durable. Also, this edge here might need to be cleaned up in some spots. Blowing all that dust off. Alright, it's time to get started. Get us some DAP. Just going to DAP this edge all the way around with a good coating. Make sure you get it all the way to the edges, and a really good amount on this edge here. This edge is very important because that's where it's going to bond to the face there, and it really needs to be a pretty tight seal to make it look good. Get back here. Put a good amount of DAP on here. You don't want to be stingy on this. Because it's very porous, as you can see. on that end grain. You want to make sure there's plenty of contact with the other DAP surface of the band when you put it on. Alright, so you get the gist here on this part. It's just to get all that on there. I'm probably going to cut some of this out for brevity's sake, but it's just the same thing all the way around. And honestly, it'd be easier for me to pick this up and not have to do it within the view of the camera. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm just going to cut the footage out. So just continue all the way around like this till you have a really good coating. So we got a good coat of DAP all the way around the edge of the shield now, and we're going to first move that out of the way where I spilled it. Alright, I'm going to take this guy. Sorry about that, didn't mean to hit you in the head. I'm going to take this guy and we're going to put a layer of DAP on, a coat of DAP on it. Building these things, the reason I want to make these videos is because I feel like it's kind of lacking out there on YouTube, and all the things I've learned about it or a lot of the things I've learned about it have been things people have shared with me, because the Dagger Here community is really awesome about that. There's plenty of chat groups and Facebook pages dedicated to these types of things, builds and Plastidip. Plastidip Artists is a good one, but to learn some more advanced things and see some beautiful work with people that are doing that out there. Just about any Dagger Here discussion, man, there's so many people that are willing to help you learn things if you want to learn them, and most are forthcoming. I mean, people like to share what they know. One of my best friends in the community, Nessie Pop Swearingen, I'm using his slave name, Nessie Pop, of the Flying Circus, has helped me a lot with builds and things when I'd have ideas and needed technical advice on how to make weapons and stuff, and really appreciate him. If you ever see Nessie Pop and you want to know anything about Dagger Here, or really anything about history or anything in general, ask the guy. We call him Nessipedia. He knows a lot of stuff and is willing to talk to you about it if he has time. Our unit, we're from Stormhold, which is in Dothan, Alabama. Right about where Alabama, Florida, and Georgia meet. And the other unit at our field is Flying Circus. Those are a lot of good people too. Probably never would have been a Murder of Crows without the Flying Circus. I certainly wouldn't have been a member, because it was the Flying Circus that brought me to the field for the first time and introduced me to Dagger Here. Thank you, Jiro and Fyogor, for that. Yeah, I think I'm going to make a few videos like this on different things that we do in the murder, our way of doing them. And maybe, you know, a few people will gain some experience from it, or trial and error, find better ways to do it. And please share your knowledge. That's what makes this game great. Everybody's willingness to share their knowledge. feel free to stop by Murder Camp anytime. Talk to us there. We're all good folks, easy to get along with. Might be some shenanigans going on when you get there, but things get a little crazy. Welcome to Dagger here, right? I've never been to Ragnarok. That's probably, or definitely is, the premier event in Dagger here thus far. And I'd like to make it one year, but it's really far to travel from here. I've got lots of RL, 3 kids, all that good stuff. But one day we'll make it up there, and I'm sure the murder will be traveling there soon. Okay, so, but Winter War is the most awesome thing I can imagine. I can imagine Ragnarok having more people, but Winter War is growing fast, and the things that Sherman or Kelliance and the Knights of Eastwind and Kushi have done there are amazing. It's beautiful, and it gets better every time I go. Anyways, back to the build. Okay, we've got all this dapped up. We've got dap around the edge here of our shield, and we're gonna let that set. It's a little cool out here. It's morning time, so it's a little cool out. I'm gonna give it probably 20-25 minutes, and then we'll stick it together and we'll get on with the next step. So I think we're ready to glue here. So in about 20-25 minutes, everything's tacked up. Wrong shield. Alright. Now what we're going to do is, remember, I keep stressing that we use the best side of this, the best face of this, to go on to the face of this part. I'm always going to start at the bottom. I want to angle this up a little bit. Should be able to see it. Okay. So I'm always going to start at the bottom of the shield because we know that there's going to be a seam there. If you start there, there's going to be a seam there. And I would like to keep my seams away from these areas here. Keep my seam away from these areas here because that's usually where you're going to get like shoulder strikes and things like that. The bottom, not so much. Never had a problem with it separating ever anyways, but okay, so we start at the bottom. We get this edge exactly flush with this edge. Hope you're able to see that. So we get this edge exactly flush with this edge and work that around. I like to go from over top because then I can see exactly where it is. We just work it all the way around, keeping it exactly flush. We're really just letting it, pushing it hard enough to tack it into place at this point. Continue to do that. Apply pressure. I don't know if you can see where I'm at up here, but just doing the same thing all the way around. Sticking this thing on. Keeping it straight. Apply a little pressure here and there. Yeah, I used a lot of excess. Actually, it would have came out perfect without that last one on there. I wonder if I can pull that off. No, not gonna be able to pull it off. Alright, so once we get around to here, where they meet, you can see that, where they meet, we're just gonna make a cut right here to cut the excess of that off. I'm gonna hold it up high to do that because it's easier for me to do it that way. Line your knife up with both edges. Give it a real cut. Still gonna need to trim that a little. That's it, always leave a little excess. Better to cut twice on something like this. It's gonna be perfect. Okay, so once we get to that point, we've cut this, and we're gonna dap this edge and that edge and let that cure for a few minutes. After that, we'll put a lot of pressure on it, rolling it around to get it to bond really well. Lots of dap on that because, like I said, the end grain of this 4-pound really absorbs the dap. Okay, so we've got it all the way around, dapped on both of the edges there. We're just going to let that sit just like that for 15 minutes. In which time I'll work on the other shields I'm working on. I usually, if I'm doing shield builds, I do 2 or 3 at a time because that's just it's just more efficient that way because you end up waiting on dap. Okay, so we're dried and ready. What we're going to do at this point, we're going to start at the top here. Just roll it, adding some good downward pressure. Making sure everything's still where it should be on the face. Kind of separate it a little there. Keep rolling it around. We stick this together. Like so. See, it just comes right together right there. Just like that. Okay, then we use pressure. Good bit of downward pressure as we roll it to make it all bond in. And sometimes you get some invaders. Usually in the summertime down here in the steamy south, it's about 10 billion mosquitoes in every inch of dap. So a little bit of pine straw won't hurt. This is for a druid anyways. Too bad it's not an oak leaf, right? Want to make sure that all those edges seam really well. What I do usually is take my thumbs, kind of pinch them together like that. All that dap's still trying to cure before it's completely cured out. That helps seal that edge. Now if you want to go the extra mile on these edges like this, you can take some sort of a caulking or something. I don't know, like an elastomeric caulk or something, and just run a bead through there to cover that up. But it's a shield, man. It's gonna get hit with swords and thrown in the back of trucks and kicked around on the field and all that stuff. Of course, you want it to be as perfect as possible when it comes off of the line here, off the forge. But structural stability is the important thing. I think we're bonded pretty good on that. Okay, so there's your shield blank with the outer rim attached. There's that. Lots of blue foam dust everywhere. Okay, and next we will be placing our handle. Grab some materials and I'll be right back. Okay, so it's time to put a handle on this thing. Time to get a handle on it. Alright, so you can see here that I've just went from the front, eyeballed where the top is. Got a mark here for the top, mark here for the bottom. These are approximations. I mean, you want it very close as possible. All right, and then we're going to first find our center. So we're looking at 20.5 inches and 20.5 inches, 20 and a quarter. 20.5, there we go. Alright, so we'll make us a mark this way. 10 and a quarter. Up. Mark this way. 10. Quarter. Where those lines cross, of course, is our center mark, center point. And gonna get our handy dandy redneck rigged compass out here. This compass is actually a pretty good little compass for detailed drawings. It's got a little graphite piece in there, but we need something a little more marking on it. So we're going to make this. I'll try to get you a measurement here. First, let me get this straight. Put it around there. Top, pull it down low. See how big we want it. Just going to make a circle here. We may make it larger, but we'll see. Really, you want enough room for the hand to get in there and operate. It is a punch shield. But you also want the wrist to be able to come out a little bit. Oop, I just messed it up. It actually looks about right. So I'm gonna measure that so you'll know what we had there. That is about 4.5 inch radius-ish. Now I have a mark on my knife, and this mark shows me where if I cut down with it to that mark, then I've almost made it to the face of the shield. So I don't want to go down any deeper. I don't want to go down that deep. So that's kind of my stop point mark. So you got another one on this side. Yeah, that's about it. I always like to leave one layer of blue foam and the face that I don't cut through. So I'm cutting through 5 layers of the blue foam, ideally. Keep it straight up and down. Looking at my mark for reference here. Be careful, you don't want to stab through your shield face. Sure, there's ways to do all this before you even put it together, and I've thought about making jigs to do that so that you could just cut the round pieces, cut this piece out, stack them together and do the thing. I was thinking about doing that with maybe pegs on a board to keep it round and keep the centers where they should be. I haven't done that yet. The murder continues to grow, though. I may do something like that for these small shields because I'm making quite a lot of them here lately.
almost all the way around. Once I'm all the way around, I usually get one of these at about the depth that I want.
All right, adjust this edge back up a little bit with my knife. Making a cross cut across the thing, at least two directions, because we're going to have to dig this out with my hands to get it down to the point. Again, sure there's a better way to do that. Hope someone will comment and tell me that thing, because I really like to do things the easy way. Now with this build, I'm doing it without any power tools, but I do believe this is the very first time I've done one without any power tools whatsoever. And I'm going to just keep cutting this into pie pieces until I have 8 pieces. Always making sure you don't go too deep. Got your mark on your blade there. Now, it's not going to come out smooth and perfect like you want it to. Whenever you pull these things out, there's going to be some work to do at the bottom down there. Alright, now for the fun part. Dig in here, start grabbing foam. Usually if you can get your fingers into where the two pieces are dapped together, you can separate it a little bit anyways, help you get started. Work our way around here. As you can see, it's pretty much peeling out right on the dap spots. Now once that dap cures, I've had to do this after the shield sat for a few days. Not as easy to pull that apart. At this point, we're down 4 layers deep. I usually go 5, but it's coming out really cleanly, and the guy that this is for is Sage, and he's got pretty small hands, so I may just go 4 deep on this and leave it a little recess. I'll have to look at it and see. See, tore a little bit out of there, left a little bit of this. If I was doing a fancier shield, of course, I would just cover this here with cloth or something nice and velvety or something cool like that. These are the basics. They just get smaller hands than I do. I'm gonna go ahead and get that last layer out of there just for the sake of things. Tip really sharp here. Making sure not to get all the way down to the 4 pound. Couple passes, pass and a half, something. Right, in our cross sections. Hopefully this comes out nice and smooth on this layer here. Just never know really. See if I can dig down exactly to that next layer and get it started. If you can get it started, you're golden. It's always best to leave a little more than to dig too deep. You can always sand it out of there. The farther you go down, the better it's going to be stuck, because the longer it's had to cure. This last layer seems to be stuck pretty good. Typically, when I got down to this bottom one, I would use a Dremel tool with like a grinding barrel type bit to remove this stuff, because it removes it really smoothly and you can control it really well. This, without doing any power tools, is my option. The option I've chosen. Alright, as you can see in here, it's pretty rough where I'm pulling that out of there. We're going to end up smoothing all that out. I'm going to try to take my knife, see if I can get this started separating right here on this next one. Kind of experimenting here because I've never done it just with my hands like this. Try to get this to separate from that piece a little bit with my knife. If I can get that in there, that'll be great. Bring me my filleting knife. Hopefully I can do this without cutting my finger. That'd be great. Certainly don't want injuries right before Winter War, just saying. The hype is real. Ready to get there.
Last year, one of our crows, Ego, cut his finger up brutally on a broken mirror just before, like 2 days before Winter War. He's one of our best fighters. But this year, everybody is pretty much well. Okay, found a spot. Awesome.
Okay, so what you can see here, what I did is I found a spot. I used my fillet knife to get down to the spot where the two get together. Now I can get my fingers in there and work it out to a smoother edge, hopefully. At least on that one pie piece. We'll see how the next one works out.
I have to do it on each one.
Chunk of it out anyways. Boy, the Dremel tool sure comes in handy. Got 2 more little pie pieces to remove. Then we'll go about making the handle part.
Piece.
Pie pieces are removed. See, it's pretty rough in there. But I'm going to get the sandpaper and work it for a few minutes to see how it goes. Getting better. A little more work to do. The guy that this shield is for, Sage Golden Bow, he is our master at archery and also one of the 3 council of our unit. He's an awesome archer, probably the best I've ever seen. You can usually get off 3 arrows out of the bow in less than 2 seconds accurately. He's really good, really fast. He's also good at other martial arts and stuff. He's one of our tacticians. He, myself, and Lord Revrag are the leaders of the unit. We're the High Council. And he really makes sound judgments. We're glad to have him. This is his shield, so anytime you see that symbol, the druid symbol, in conjunction with the 3 feathers of the murder, that's a good guy. Of course, those 3 feathers pretty much indicate that it's a good guy, period. Alright, so we've removed most of the stuff in there. It's about as far as I'm willing to go with this one. A lot easier with a Dremel tool, I'll tell you that. But, yeah, so there's that. Once it gets Plastidip in there, it'll look nice. Alright, so on to the next part, which is to make ourselves a handle. So we take some 3/4 inch PVC, and I've already cut these out of 4-pound. This is what's going to go on top of the PVC to hold it in place, or, you know, to help hold it in place. So we want to put these in place so that we'll know how to cut our PVC. We're going to want it, let's see, center right there. We're going to want it about like that. Alright. You can cut this with whatever you got, Dremel tool, hacksaw, whatever, but if you're going to be cutting a lot of PVC, or even if not, these things are like 10 bucks, and it's just this easy. Cut. Anytime I'm working with PVC and going to glue anything to it or anything like that, I always rough it up, because it's hard for it to adhere to that plastic. Hard for anything to adhere to it, really. Hit it in a few different directions and just trying to rough it up. Might hit it with this coarser one a couple times. We'll do this, just kind of round those edges off just a little bit so they don't dig into the foam. Never a bad idea. I've got it in my hand. Feels good. Chip those edges there. All right. Okay. Now we're going to line these up with the top and the bottom. Remember, I've got my 2 lines here. I've got that lined up pretty close. Make sure this still covers everything. A little bit extra. That's it. Alright, so let's steal my Sharpie back from my redneck contraption over here. Make me a top line. Make a bottom line. Cut 2. And I'm going to make lines up the edges here. But I always want to cut, okay, try to make the line exactly the pipe. Okay, if I put it in there, this isn't going to be touching the sides. So I always want to cut a little to the inside of these to get it just where I want it. Because you want this pipe to have as much contact with the surrounding foam as it can whenever it goes in there. That being the case, usually cut it a little bit small I put a lot of DAP on here and I just stick it right in there. And I've never had one come loose. So.
Really felt good this morning, didn't it?
Nice weather for sure.
That morning.
Yes, sir. All right, then we're gonna. Always time to be neighborly. We're gonna gauge here where it's gonna cross over this, and we're gonna start wrapping it with athletic tape. I prefer bat tape, which is just a little thinner. I think it sticks a little bit better, but athletic tape works just fine. One round about like that, and then just give it a wrap. And this is for grip. Always make sure it overlaps at least a 1/4 inch, I think, on this big stuff anyways. Alright, then I'll do one more round around the bottom once I get there. Pull it really tight. Just lock it in. Rip it off. Alright. So there we go. We've got our spots made. So I'm gonna put this here and mark about how deep I want it. If I'm not mistaken, it's about 2.5 of these deep. Maybe we'll go 2. I'm saying we're gonna go 2 deep. And then if there's a little bit of a bump here, we're gonna just cover it up with that because I want to have plenty of room there. If I remember correctly, it was about 2 deep anyways. Yeah, that's about right. I want it to be snug and secure in there. Alright, get this guy. This guy. Like I said, I made my lines here, but I'm going to cut a little to the inside of the lines. I want it to fit snugly. Alright, same thing, dig this stuff out of here. Trying to get it on a even spot. So we go in here, dig it out in a bit of a half circle, as close as possible. How that fits snugly. Good. Good. Right, spin it around, do the same thing on this side. Cut a little to the inside of our line. Down 2 layers deep. Across the top. Dig it out. Hey Casper. Dig it out. Boom. That one came out straight, so I don't think I need to cut any more on it. It's going to fit snugly. Snugly. We're going to have that and that's how we're gluing it down. Alright, so we'll eyeball these in before I start putting DAP everywhere. Eyeball those in to where it just touches and covers that PVC. Take our, all this is going to get sprayed with a Plastidip, so you can draw on it however you like. I can make my spot because once you get the DAP on there, stick it in the wrong spot, it sucks. So eyeball it, get it exactly where I want it, and then draw the lines for it. Now my lines are there. this one up top. Always also want to take them off because these may not be cut exactly right. I flip it just like that so I can flip it right back on like that. I'm going to do this one the same way and just move it to the side. Alright, so now the dappy daps. Take this guy out, put him on the side over here. Lots of dap in here, lots of dap. Like to get it good and gooey in there. Up the sides, make sure you get good coverage. A lot of people will probably yell at me like, you're putting too much dap, it's never gonna stick. But it does, man. It does. Say what you want. Put a lot of them. None ever failed. It's cool. One thing that you'll find really in any kind of building is that some people, rather than trying things, will just regurgitate what they've heard, you know. Oh, that'll never work because of this reason, because of that reason, and it's really just because somebody else said it somewhere and they're repeating it. Now, whether or not anybody ever tried or did their own experiments with it, that's another question. I agree you should learn from other people's experience. Don't be afraid to try it if you think that it's sound. Give it a shot, as long as it's safe. As long as it's safe. Be willing to innovate, be willing to try different things and see how they work out, because a lot of myths and things get facilitated in communities. Had a guy on my sword build tutorial was adamant that a 32-inch sword on a 3/8 inch core would never pass flex. Let me assure you that it does. You grab it with both hands and shake the shit out of it and it doesn't come anywhere near 45 degrees. Now that's about the extent, or about the maximum length that you can get out of that, and that's with a 4-pound core box around it. I've never made one with a blue foam core box like that, but I wouldn't go any more than 33 overall inches, or 29 inch core. You may get away with a 30-inch core, but I wouldn't go any farther than that with that 3/8 inch. I mean, I would try it. Give it a shot, see what it does. Try a 32-inch one. Let me know how it goes. Yeah, give things a try. See how they work. Don't be ignorant. Test them hard. You're gonna test a thing for flex. Shake the hell out of it. Beat it over a shield if it's yours. Don't let anybody else do it. Alright, so we've got this glued in there. Gonna adapt this and this. Make sure I still got my pieces right. Trying to stick. That one's where it needs to be. Okay. Put a little gap over here. I mean, I assume this piece here actually does something, but I really think that the DAP holds that in there pretty well. This piece is just added security, and it looks good too. You don't want just PPC showing. Alright, so getting both these pieces dapped in about 15 minutes. I'll glue them on there. Probably not going to show you that part because it's just self-explanatory. You're just sticking things to things. You've seen that a few times already. And then whenever I come back, after they're glued on, I will show you, we'll start working on spraying some Plastidip on this thing and getting it ready for painting and prettying up. So there we are. Structure of the shield is built. It's ready to get sexy. All right, we'll be back in a few minutes. All right, so we've got our handle glued on there. Just recently glued, so I'm not gonna grab on it too much yet. Let that cure for at least a couple of hours. Blow all your foreign debris off and stuff, and it's time to get the Plastidip and make sure that all of it's cleared. Otherwise, it will be forever there. Okay, and like I said before, I like to use the spray on these little shields like this because it does okay. I mean, I haven't had any issues with it ever. And painting on the thick stuff, I feel like it fills in these holes too much, and I don't want that. I want to leave that texture as much as possible. So I do like the spray on my shields. Just put, it takes a couple coats, sometimes 3. Goes on pretty heavily, and it dries quickly. So you spray it on, and then by the time you get the other side done, wait 5 minutes, it's ready to go again. Make sure you shake it really good, 'cause that's the thing. Also, before I start, I always turn it upside down. Blow out any debris, make sure it's spraying right. Okay, and just get to work. And when it goes on, it looks kind of bubbly at first, but it's kind of self-leveling. It levels itself out. You don't want to put a really thick coat, because just like with painting or anything else, several thin coats is better than one thick coat. Just try to get a good covering. I always do my face first. No really reason for that other than I just like to see the Plastidip go onto a large surface area. Just try to keep it moving, and don't stall in one spot or you'll have a puddle. And we don't want puddles. Holding it about, I don't know, 8 to 10 inches away from the surface. The foam soaks in a good bit, which is good because it makes it more rubberized. Always make sure you hit your edges real good around here, but you got to be careful with that. Let what's there dry so that, again, you don't puddle. So I'm going to move this to the edge here. You can see that, I don't know. So that I can hit the sides. A lot of people think this stuff's really hard to do. It's really not. It's just a matter of doing it. A lot of us like to talk about doing things, but never actually get started. First step getting started is putting your hands to work, you know. Once you do that, kind of all follows afterwards. I guess my biggest problem is starting too many projects, and procrastination's also part of my problem. Get started on something. Make something. Do a thing. Something to be proud of. probably all of us have noticed the dagger here community is more than just fighting. That's one of the funner aspects of it. There's also crafting and community and writing lore. Also role play. We just did a murder night a couple of weeks ago where Murder of Crows and a few other friends from our field went out to Chattahoochee State Park and set up some scenarios around a lake out there. We had a camp on one side and a camp on the other side. It was basically capture your flag, but the thing was, in each camp was hidden an item. One was a book and one was a dagger in the two respective camps, two opposite camps. And you had to capture their item and bring it back. There's a lot of other game mechanics, like we could set up reses with tiki torches, and the only person that could set up reses was the shaman. We had a shaman, a burglar, a wizard, a ranger, something else. What was the other guy? Ranger. I don't know. Anyways, we had a really good time doing it. Oh, the wizard was like the healer. He was the only one that could heal. It was a good time. The game lasted probably about 4 or 5 hours. It's pitch black out there, so it was really fun. You got to do a lot of ninja shit, hiding in the woods and killing people as they came by. A lot of tactics stuff with your team. Savvy, my girlfriend, and Lilith were our team's burglar, and Savvy was the priest, so she protected the burglar, and we kind of made distractions and stuff and kept people off the bridge while they snuck into their camp. And they had a really good time because there were people in their camp rezzing and talking and everything, and gave away the position of their item while they were talking about it. And Savvy and Lilith were hidden right there next to their tent. So that was pretty cool. They had a good time with that. Another thing that was like the main thing was Coyote. It was our, I guess you'd call him kind of our herald slash dungeon master out there. Nazi Pop. He played Coyote. Coyote could, if he could see you and call your name, you were immediately dead. He was immune to all weapons except for the dagger that the priest carried. And but he was afraid of firelight. So you could set up torches and he couldn't come within 20 feet of the torch, so that would protect you. We had a really good time. He did a really good job. So it's kind of like while you're doing this, you're looking as it's drying, and where it dries, you spray a little more on. Hit the spots on the edges that you haven't hit yet. Just keep it rolling. And there was a bridge between the two, kind of across the lake between the two camps. So there were some bridge battles. That's where Coyote resided. So anytime you're crossing the bridge, you had to deal with him. But you had to either be disguised so he couldn't see you, or time it because he walked a pattern like a guard would. And it was really fun. It was a good time. First time we'd done that, and we're going to be doing that more often. Beautiful night too. The Orionid, I guess is what you call it, Orionid or something like that. But it was a huge meteor shower was going on at the same time. So you could look up, and it's so dark out there because you're out in the middle of nowhere, no lights whatsoever. So you could see every star, and there was a meteor shower that was just beautiful all night long. It was really great. Good time. Right. Always look from different angles too because you miss things. I didn't see that. I like to make my feathers and things like that kind of brightly colored when I'm Plastidipping. Make them brightly colored with the craft foam so that I can see where I've missed, because I want to get a good solid coating on these things. And the more Plastidip you get on those graphics and stuff, the better off you are, because really seals them in there, keeps them from getting knocked up and knocked loose. Okay, with that, I think the face of our shield is solid. I'm gonna go around the edge one more time here on the bottom side. And then we're gonna give it probably a good 20 minutes to dry so that I can flip it over, because I don't want to pull that Plastidip off of there by putting it on its face. One more coat around the edge here, then we'll let it dry before we do the back side of it. See some yellow there. Look at it from different angles. Right, so that's that. We're going to let it dry for about 20 minutes, then we're going to come back and do the back, and we'll see how that goes. After that, I'll probably paint it off camera because it takes a long time, then I'll show you the finished product. Right, so this is the last video before I paint it up and make it pretty. You can see, got all that. Well, just got some stuff stuck to it. Just dry. So we're gonna Plastidip the back of it now, and then it should be a matter of painting it and making it look good. Now you can always make this look better in here, like I said, if you want to glue a piece of fabric in there, make it look nice. Savvy's actually got some velvet inside of hers that she made. She's got a bigger, nicer shield that she just finished up. But this we're gonna leave just as it is and just Plastidip hell out of it. Don't want to Plastidip your handle. Spray the insides really good. Change the angle here. Typically takes a little over a can, maybe a can and a half or so. Get it done. Actually, since I did this one without power tools, I may end up putting a piece of fabric in there for sage. Make it look a little better. Because without power tools, I kind of jacked it up a little bit in there as far as how it looks. Still, of course, stable and everything. I really like using a Dremel tool for that. When you're spraying a blue foam like this, always hit it from multiple angles because it does have creases and stuff in it. And that's pretty self-explanatory. You spray it until you don't see blue anymore, right? About to finish up this can.
almost made it through the whole shield with one cam. There's just some little spots on the inside here that need to get hit one more time. Want some thickness inside there. Basic Plastidip shield. Looks good though. Fights well. Very durable. My micro shield, my murder shield like this one that I've been using for over a year and a half, looks pretty good. Like I said, I think it's got some chips in the foam in certain spots. That's more not from fighting, but me mistreating my equipment, throwing it in the back of the truck and piling things on top of it. I really abuse my equipment. I wish I didn't, but that's who I am. That's the way it is. Always got 2,000 things going on and shit piles up. Alright, nice good thick coat on the back here. Alright, so I'm gonna let that dry, and the next video you'll see is gonna be the finished product whenever I paint it up and everything. But today, while it's sunshiny outside, I won't be painting. I'll be finishing up some other shields as well. Okay, so thank you for joining me for this, and I'll show you the finished product in a little while. Here's the shield. 21-inch punch shield, Plastidip. Nice, solid, sturdy. Very light. With our 3 murder crow's feathers and Sage's druidic rays. Alwyn, rays of Alwyn. If you please like, share, whatever, please leave comments. Let me know if this helped you out. I really hope that it does help some people out, and people can see they can do it also, and it's not that big of a deal. And it's very inexpensive, honestly. As long as you got the time and the patience, make a nice thing. See you on the field.